When Haider al-Abadi took over from Nouri al-Maliki as Prime Minister of Iraq in 2014, he promised greater freedom for the press and lifted bans on several networks that had been shuttered under the former administration. The idea being that the time had come to heal rifts in a divided nation. Less than 2 years later, Iraq's Communications and Media Commission, the CMC, appears to be reverting. It has recently shut down an Iraqi TV channel, al-Baghdadi, taken a satirical TV show off the air, taken down a critical news website, and closed Al Jazeera's bureau in Baghdad. With ISIL still holding significant parts of Iraqi territory and stepping up its attacks in the capital, the al-Abadi government faces an existential threat. However, critics are saying that silencing parts of the media is just the government's way of dodging questions over its failure to deliver the reforms it promised. Our starting point this week is Baghdad. In many ways, the Iraqi media have reflected the convulsive changes the country has seen since the 2003 invasion and the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. There has been an explosive growth in the number of privately owned news outlets. In a country comprised of Shias, Sunnis, and Kurds, the media landscape is similarly factionalized. And all the talk that accompanied Prime Minister al-Abadi's rise to power in 2014 of a new day for the Iraqi media has fallen victim, as much of Iraq has, to the threat of ISIL, as well as al-Abadi's inability to form a functioning coalition. What the Prime Minister can control is Iraq's media regulator, the CMC, which is the tool the government has used to come down hard on the media.
When Abadi came to power, and I went to work in his team, he came with the promise of reform. He came with a promise of change. And one of the main themes of that promise was actually to be more tolerant towards the media.
The CMC justified these recent set of actions under a set of security guidelines that were issued after the ISIS offensive into Iraq in June 2014. So anything that portrays the security forces in a negative light, or anything that portrays ISIS in a positive light, would be sanctioned by the CMC.
Actually, the CMC's job should not be to shut down media offices or TV channels, bureaus in Baghdad. Their job should be to regulate the media environment, not to crack down on the media for purposes that could well be political purposes.
Al Jazeera has been in and out of trouble with Iraqi governments, past and present. In 2004, its Baghdad bureau was shut down when the Alawi government accused the network of fueling hostility against forces in the US-led coalition. It happened again in 2013 when the al-Maliki government said Al Jazeera had a sectarian bias. This latest ban under Prime Minister al-Abadi is officially for violating broadcasting rules and regulations. But what it comes down to is terminology. Al Jazeera calls the Iranian-backed Shia-led forces fighting ISIL in Ramadi militias.
هناك تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية في مواجهة قوات عراقية رأس الحربة فيها ميليشيا الحشد الشعبي.
That term, militia, has troubling implications for Iraqis, given the atrocities various paramilitary groups have carried out in the country.
The term militia has a negative connotation in Iraq. Politically speaking, any military force that is not governed by the government or the Ministry of Defense is called a militia. Whether Al Jazeera supports or opposes the forces, it used terminology that is often used to refer to it. Why do we want to impose a single voice in Iraq? The time for imposing a single voice is over.
The word militia is an insulting word for the Iraqi people, not just for the government. Many of Al Jazeera's programs create tensions and sectarian divides. For example, Faisal Qasim's program never ends without a dispute between the two guests.
Al Jazeera issued a statement saying it was shocked and bewildered by the closure. Al Jazeera is committed to its editorial principles in Iraq, it said, and that the CMC's decision contradicts the promises of the Iraqi government to protect freedom of speech. Not even comedians are immune in Iraq these days.
جوعانين؟ أي كلنا جوعان. جيب لنا غدا.
The CMC has ordered Sumaria TV to take the Bashir show off the air.
كل الأشياء اللي تجي براسي ما يصير أحكيها.
The program deals in political satire, the way Bassem Youssef's show did in Egypt before it proved to be too much for the government there. The host of the Bashir show, a former Iraqi journalist who produces the program from neighboring Jordan, said the CMC's ban came after he refused the government's demand to soften the content. However, the shutdown that best symbolizes the structural and sectarian flaws in the Iraqi media is the closing of al-Baghdadi TV. The al-Abadi government is Shia-led. Al-Baghdadi is a channel popular with Sunnis and has made much of the Prime Minister's inability to form a workable coalition.
ايش تنتظر حيدر العبادي حتى يقدم قائمة من شخصيات وطنية مستقلة تخدم البلد كوزراء؟
It was ordered off the air by the CMC, the official reason given, operating without a license. The Iraqi media are as factionalized as the country they cover, so divided that there are Shia channels that rival factions within the Shia population won't watch.
You would have a channel like al-Furat, controlled by the Supreme Islamic Council of Iraq, which is a Shia party in Iraq. And these channels would feature news predominantly about the political party that controls them. Even though al-Furat is a Shia channel, this Shia party has conflicts with other Shia parties. So it's too simplistic to say you have a Shia media and a Kurdish media. You have media controlled by Shia parties and Kurdish parties, but often represents even the factional infighting amongst the Kurds or amongst the Shia.
Unfortunately, Iraqi media, in particular broadcast media, has failed to create a national identity for Iraqis. Each channel has a different agenda. We can't have dozens of channels representing dozens of groups, each of them only speaking to those who match their ideology. Each channel has its own agenda. Some channels repeat the news, others actually try to mislead viewers.
Iraq is going through difficult times. I know that the tensions are very high, but media organizations have a responsibility to not make the situation worse. Sunni, Shia, even some Kurdish media organizations are not professional, and some of them are even dangerous in what they show and what they preach to their viewers and listeners. So that's when we should see the CMC imposing its code of conduct or ethics on those who are actually inciting hatred and violence.
On the download now, our viewers with some thoughts on the state of journalism in Iraq.
The main problem of Iraqi media is most of the media outlet is belonging to various parties or political figures who wants to establish their own propaganda. In the south and middle of Iraq, the Shia media outlet. In the north and the Kurdish part of Iraq, the Kurdish media outlets. In the Sunni part of Iraq, we have since 2014 the ISIS media propaganda outlet. Despite the different media landscape in Iraq, we have the lack of access to information.